Working since 16, never asked for a dime, and still paid off my own education. I bought my first home alone, and got sued by my parents for stealing my sister's future. My name is Amanda, and I am 29 years old. Since I was 16, I have worked every job I could find to support myself. I paid my own way through college, cleared my student loans, and finally saved enough for a down payment on a small house. It should have been the proudest moment of my life when I got those keys. Instead, I found myself staring at court papers. My own parents were suing me for 70% of my home value, claiming I had stolen my sister Emma's future. If you are watching this, please drop a comment letting me know where you are from. Hit that like button and subscribe as I share how my greatest achievement became my deepest heartbreak. I grew up in a family of 4 in a modest suburb of Minneapolis. My father John worked as an insurance adjuster, and my mother Karen was a part-time receptionist at a dental office. Then there was me and my sister Emma, who was 8 years younger. From the outside, we probably looked like a typical middle-class American family. But behind closed doors, money was always a point of tension. Our house was filled with constant arguments about finances. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter and hushed conversations about money would stop whenever I entered the room. Despite having steady jobs, my parents always seemed to be living paycheck to paycheck. Looking back, I realized much of it was poor financial management rather than actual lack of income. What hurt most as a child was the obvious difference in how my parents treated Emma and me. From an early age, they decided Emma was the special one, the child with real potential. They would say things like, "Emma has natural talent," or "Emma could really be somebody someday." When it came to me, the message was clear though. Never directly stated, I was ordinary, average, nothing exceptional to invest in. By the time I was 14, I had internalized this message. I was the practical one, the responsible one. I started helping our elderly neighbor Mrs. Peterson with household chores after school. She would pay me $10 an hour to vacuum dust and organize her medication. This became my first taste of financial independence. I used that money to buy school supplies, clothes, and occasionally treats like ice cream with friends. My parents never asked where these items came from. They simply seemed relieved not to have to provide them. When I turned 16, I applied for my first real job at Sweet Dreams Bakery, 6 blocks from our house. I would walk there immediately after schoolwork until closing at 7:30, then head home to start my homework. The owner Diane was a kind woman who quickly became a mentor to me. She taught me not just about baking, but about customer service, inventory management, and the importance of saving money. The day I received my first paycheck was both exciting and disappointing. I had planned to open a savings account dreaming of college and independence. Instead, my father sat me down at the kitchen table. "Now that you are earning money, you need to contribute to the household," he said, sliding a calculator toward me. 30% of your earnings should come to us for rent, food, and utilities. I stared at him in disbelief. "But Dad, I am only 16. I thought I should be saving for college." "College?" My mother laughed from the doorway. "Amanda, be realistic. With your grades, you would be better off learning a trade. Besides, Emma will need a college fund. She has a real future ahead of her." That 30% rule remained in place throughout my high school years. I never missed a payment, even as I watched my sister receive gift after gift. Emma got piano lessons at $200 a month. She took ballet classes 3 times a week. Her room was redecorated with beautiful furniture, while I still had the same twin bed from childhood. My routine became grueling, but predictable. School from 8 to 3, work from 3:30 to 7:30. Homework until midnight or later. Weekends meant double shifts at the bakery. Summer breaks were spent working full-time rather than enjoying teenage freedom. The rare occasions when I bought something new for myself were met with judgment. "Another new shirt, Amanda," my mother would say. "You know you should be more responsible with your money." This coming from the woman who had just spent $300 on a special ballet costume for Emma. My junior year of high school, I picked up a second job on weekends at the local library. I told my parents it was for extra spending money, but in reality, I was building a secret college fund. The library job paid less than the bakery, but offered something more valuable: quiet hours to study during slow periods. My grades began to improve significantly. Mrs. Peterson, who had become something of a grandmother figure to me, noticed my exhaustion one day when I came to help her. "Amanda dear, you are working yourself to the bone," she said, pouring me a cup of hot chocolate. "What are you saving for that requires so much sacrifice?" When I explained my situation, tears welled in her eyes. Your parents should be supporting your dreams, not the other way around, she said. She began paying me extra, insisting I put it directly into my college fund. My senior year I had maintained a 3.8 gigapascals despite my work schedule, and had saved nearly $8,000 for college. My guidance counselor helped me apply for scholarships and financial aid, believing in me when my own family did not. When acceptance letters started arriving, my parents seemed more annoyed than proud. College is expensive, my father warned. Do not come crying to us when you cannot afford it. I assured them I would not. After all, I never had before. When I received my acceptance letter from State University with a partial academic scholarship, I felt a mixture of pride and terror. The scholarship would cover about 60% of my tuition, but that left 40% plus room and board that somehow needed to be paid. My carefully saved $8,000 would barely cover my first-year expenses. My parents' reaction to my college acceptance was lukewarm at best. Over dinner one night, I excitedly shared the news, hoping for at least some acknowledgement of my achievement. State University, that is expensive for what it is, my father commented, barely looking up from his plate. You know we cannot help you with that. I am not asking for help, I replied. I have my scholarship and savings. I will figure out the rest. My mother sighed dramatically. I do not understand why you need to go at all. You have a perfectly good job at the bakery. Diane would probably make you assistant manager if you stayed. Because I want more than that, Mom. I want a career, not just a job. And what about your contribution to this household? My father demanded. How are we supposed to make up that shortfall? It was in that moment that I realized they had been counting on my income for far longer than I had understood. The 30% I had been paying was not about teaching me responsibility. It was about supplementing their budget so they could afford Emma's activities. I was not a daughter being guided toward independence. I was an income source. I am sorry, but I am going to college, I said, firmly, surprised by my own resolve. I have worked for this opportunity and I am taking it. The weeks before I left home were filled with cold shoulders and passive-aggressive comments. My parents acted as if I was abandoning the family rather than pursuing education. Only Emma seemed genuinely happy for me. Though at 11 years old, she did not fully understand the tension. Move-in day at the dormitory was a solo experience. My parents claimed they could not take time off work to drive me, so I packed what I could into suitcases and took the bus to campus. My roommate Jennifer arrived with her entire family, who helped set up her side of the room with coordinated bedding, decorative pillows, and family photos. I unpacked my second-hand sheets and single-framed photo of Emma and me in silence. That first night in the dormitory, listening to Jennifer talk on the phone with her parents about how much she missed them already, I cried silently into my pillow. Not because I missed my family, but because I realized how abnormal my relationship with them truly was. The financial reality of college hit hard and fast. Even with my scholarship, the costs were overwhelming. I found a job as a server at a restaurant near campus within my first week. The hours were brutal, 5 to 11 p.m. on weeknights, meaning I would go straight from classes to work, then return to study until the early morning hours. Weekends were double shifts, often leaving me too exhausted to socialize with other students. During my sophomore year, I added a second job as a teaching assistant for an introductory business course. The pay was minimal, but it looked good on my resume and gave me valuable experience. Between the two jobs, I managed to cover my expenses without taking on excessive student loans, though I still had to borrow about $10,000 per year. My tiny dorm room became my sanctuary and prison. The desk lamp would burn until 3 or 4 in the morning, as I struggled to keep up with assignments after exhausting shifts. Cup noodles became my primary food source, not for the college student cliché, but because they cost less than $1 per meal. I tracked every penny in a meticulous budget spreadsheet, calculating exactly how many hours I needed to work each week to stay afloat. Jennifer eventually moved out, claiming my late night studying and early morning alarms were disrupting her sleep. She was replaced by Jessica, a scholarship student, who also worked part-time. Jessica understood my situation in a way Jennifer never could, and we quickly became friends. My parents help when they can, but there are 5 kids in my family, she explained one night as we both studied late. I am the first to go to college, so I am kind of the experiment. At least they support you emotionally, I said, not meaning to sound bitter but failing. Jessica looked at me thoughtfully. Your family situation sounds really toxic, Amanda. Have you ever talked to someone about it? Like a therapist? I laughed. With what time or money? Therapy is a luxury I cannot afford. Despite the challenges, I excelled academically, My finance and business classes felt relevant and practical. After years of managing my own limited budget, professors began to notice my work ethic, and one recommended me for a summer internship at Meridian Financial Services after my junior year. The internship was a turning point. For the first time, I worked in a professional environment where my contributions were valued. My supervisor Michael seemed impressed by my determination and practical knowledge. The summer internship paid more than my restaurant and TA positions combined, allowing me to save a small cushion for senior year. Throughout those college years, communication with my parents was minimal, and almost always centered around money. They rarely called to check on my well-being or academic progress. Instead, phone calls usually began with casual conversation before inevitably turning to requests. Emma needs new pointe shoes for ballet. They cost $200. The refrigerator broke. We need $404 repairs. Emma got accepted to a special summer music camp. It is $2,000. I sent money when I could justify it as helping my sister, rather than enabling my parents. But each request left me feeling used rather than loved. In my senior year, I met Tyler in my advanced finance seminar. Smart, kind, and from a loving family, he was everything I had never experienced. When he invited me home for Thanksgiving, I witnessed for the first time what a supportive family looked like. His parents asked about my classes, my goals, my opinions. They seemed genuinely interested in me as a person, not as a resource. "Why are you crying?" Tyler asked, when he found me alone in the guest room that night. "Because I did not know families could be like yours," I admitted. I did not know parents could love their children without conditions. That Thanksgiving weekend changed something fundamental in how I viewed family relationships. I began to understand that what I had experienced was not normal or healthy. And most importantly, I realized I deserved better. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in finance with a minor in business administration. My GPA of 3.7 earned me cum laude honors, though no one from my family attended the ceremony. Emma wanted to come, but my parents claimed they could not afford the trip despite it being only a 3-hour drive from home. Michael, my internship supervisor, had been impressed enough with my work to offer me a full-time position at Meridian Financial Services upon graduation. The starting salary of $50,000 a year felt like an astronomical sum after years of scraping by on minimum wage jobs. My first major decision was housing. Most of my colleagues chose to rent apartments in trendy neighborhoods, spending 30 to 40% of their income on housing. I opted for a tiny studio apartment in an older building, 45 minutes from the office by public transportation. The rent consumed only 20% of my take-home pay, allowing me to focus on my next financial goals, paying off student loans and saving for a house. I created a detailed 5-year plan. Year 1 would focus on building an emergency fund and beginning student loan repayment. Years 2 through 4 would accelerate loan repayment while building a down payment fund. Year 5 would be devoted to house hunting. My lifestyle remained frugal, despite my professional salary. I brought lunch to work every day, shopped at discount grocery stores, and continued to use public transportation rather than buying a car. Colleagues often invited me to happy hours or weekend trips that I declined, knowing each $60 dinner or $300 getaway would delay my goals. Jessica remained my closest friend, understanding my determination in a way others did not. She had landed a teaching position at a local high school and shared my value of financial independence. Most people our age are not thinking about retirement accounts or mortgage rates. She laughed one evening as we reviewed my budget spreadsheet over cheap pizza in my apartment. Most people our age did not have to pay rent to their parents at 16, I replied. My relationship with Tyler had evolved from classmates to close friends to something more complicated. He respected my financial goals, but struggled to understand why I pushed myself so hard. "You deserve to enjoy life now, not just prepare for some future that might never come," he would argue during our frequent discussions about my rigid budget. "I am enjoying life," I would insist. "Financial security is worth more to me than temporary pleasures." Our different perspectives eventually led to a mutual decision to remain friends rather than pursue a romantic relationship. Though painful, this choice allowed me to maintain focus on my goals without compromise. At work, my dedication and financial acumen did not go unnoticed. Within 18 months, I received my first promotion to financial analyst, with a salary increase to $62,000. Rather than expanding my lifestyle, I maintained my frugal habits and directed the additional income toward my student loans. By the end of my 3rd year at Meridian, I had paid off my $40,000 in student loans, built an emergency fund of $12,000, and began serious saving for a house down payment. The accomplishment felt monumental, yet I had no one to truly share it with who understood the significance. Throughout this time, my relationship with my family remained strained and one-sided. The pattern established during college continued rare communication except when financial needs arose. Emma was now in high school, excelling in music and academics. My parents spoke of her potential with the same reverence they always had, and their expectations for her future were grandiose. Emma's piano teacher thinks she could get into Juilliard. My mother announced during one of our infrequent phone calls. Of course, the application process and audition preparation will be expensive. The statement hung in the air, the unspoken request clear. I had already sent $3,000 that year for various expenses related to Emma's activities. Each time I told myself it was for my sister's benefit, not my parents'. But the line was becoming increasingly blurred. "Mom, I have my own financial goals I am working toward," I said carefully. "I cannot be Emma's college fund." The silence on the other end was frigid. "I see. Your sister's future means nothing to you now that you have your fancy job and city apartment." The guilt trip was familiar, but this time something in me resisted. "That is not fair. I have helped a lot over the years, but I cannot be expected to finance another person's education when I just finished paying for my own." The conversation ended poorly with my mother claiming I had changed, become selfish and cold. These accusations hurt, but I held firm to my boundaries. 2 weeks later my father called with a more direct approach. "Emma got accepted to Westfield University. Full 4-year tuition is $40,000 per year. We need to know how much you can contribute." Westfield was a prestigious private university known for its arts programs and astronomical costs. I was stunned by both the assumption I would contribute and the amount in question. "Dad, that is over $160,000 total. I do not have that kind of money to give. You make good money now. You could take out a loan to help your sister. That is what family does." The irony of his statement was not lost on me. Family helps each other when they can. No one helped me with my education. That was different. "You were always independent." "I was not given a choice," I replied. The conversation dissolved into accusations and old resentments. My father eventually hung up after telling me I was breaking my mother's heart with my selfishness. Despite the emotional toll these interactions took, I remained committed to my financial plan. When Emma herself called to ask about college funding, I took a different approach. "I cannot pay your tuition, Emma. But I can help you apply for scholarships, look into more affordable schools, and teach you how to manage money so you can be independent like I had to be." Her response surprised me. "I never asked them to put this on you, Amanda. I know how hard you worked for everything you have." That conversation was the first genuine connection I had felt with my sister in years. We began talking more regularly, with me serving as a sounding board and advisor rather than a checkbook. I helped her apply for scholarships and financial aid, resulting in a substantial package from a state university comparable to the one I had attended. My parents were disappointed by her choice, seeing it as settling for less than she deserved. They continued to pressure me for contributions which I had earmarked specifically for Emma's textbooks or dormitory supplies. By my 5th year at Meridian now, as a senior financial analyst with a salary of $78,000, I had saved enough for a 20% down payment on a modest home. My years of sacrifice and discipline were about to pay off in the form of the stability I had craved since childhood. What I did not anticipate was how my family would react to this milestone, or how their reaction would forever change our relationship. House hunting was both exciting and terrifying. I had specific criteria: a small but well-maintained home in a safe neighborhood with good public transportation access, priced under $250,000. My real estate agent Natalie was patient as we viewed dozens of properties over 3 months. "Most first-time buyers your age are looking for condos or continuing to rent," she commented, during one of our search days. "It is impressive that you are in a position to buy a house outright." I smiled, feeling a rare moment of pride. "I have been working toward this since I was 16. Finally, we founded a 1920s bungalow with 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a small but functional kitchen and a tiny backyard. At $220,000, it was within my budget. The inspection revealed no major issues, and the location was perfect, close enough to work, but in an affordable neighborhood. Signing the mortgage papers was surreal. Despite years of planning for this moment, I could hardly believe it was happening. The loan officer remarked that it was unusual to see someone my age with such a solid financial foundation. "Most people your age have minimal credit history and mountains of student debt," he said, as I signed the final documents. "I paid off my student loans 3 years ago," I replied, unable to keep the pride from my voice. The day I received the keys, I stood alone in the empty living room of my new home, overcome with emotion. This house represented not just a financial investment but a psychological one. It was tangible proof that I had overcome my upbringing, that I could provide for myself what my parents never had: security. Jessica and Tyler helped me move in, bringing housewarming gifts and champagne to celebrate. We sat on the floor eating pizza as I had not yet purchased furniture. To Amanda, Jessica toasted, raising her plastic cup, who worked harder than anyone I know to get here. To having roots, Tyler added, something you deserve more than anyone. After settling in for a few weeks, I decided it was time to invite my family to see the house. Despite our strained relationship, this was a milestone I wanted to share with them. Perhaps I thought naively seeing my success would make them proud. They arrived on a Saturday afternoon, my father critically eyeing the exterior as they walked up the path to the front door. "It is small," was his first comment upon entering. "Perfect size for me," I replied, trying to maintain a positive tone. My mother walked through the rooms with an expression of faint distaste, touching surfaces and looking for flaws. "This neighborhood is not very upscale, is it?" "It is safe and convenient to my office," I explained. Emma, now in her second year of college, seemed genuinely happy for me. "I think it is awesome, Amanda. You worked so hard for this." I had prepared lunch, hoping to create a pleasant atmosphere for what I hoped might be a new chapter in our family dynamics. As we sat at my new dining table, the conversation initially remained superficial, focused on neighborhood amenities and commute times. Then my mother set down her fork and cleared her throat. "Emma has some news she needs to share." Emma looked down at her plate, clearly uncomfortable. I might have to take a break from school next semester." Why?" I asked, concerned. "The scholarship I had for this year was not renewed," she explained quietly, "and my student loan application was denied because of Dad's credit score." "We have had some financial setbacks," my father said defensively. "Medical bills, car repairs, you know how it is." "So what is the plan?" I asked, already sensing where this conversation was heading. "Well," my mother began, her tone shifting to one I recognized all too well. "We thought, given your new purchase, that you must be in a very comfortable financial position. I just bought a house. I am not exactly flush with cash right now. But surely you must have savings left. Or, you could take out a home equity loan," my father suggested. "Emma needs about $20,000 for this year." I stared at them in disbelief. "I used all my savings for the down payment, and I am not going to borrow against my house that I just bought." "So you are just going to let your sister drop out of college?" my mother asked, her voice rising. "After all we have done for you." The absurdity of her statement left me momentarily speechless. "What exactly have you done for me?" "I have been working and supporting myself since I was 16. I paid for my own education. I bought this house entirely on my own." "We raised you," my father said indignantly. "We put a roof over your head." "A roof I paid rent for as a teenager," I countered. The argument escalated quickly. My parents accused me of being selfish, of forgetting where I came from, of abandoning family and their time of need. I pointed out the years of financial support I had already provided, the lack of support I had received, and the unfairness of expecting me to mortgage my future for Emma. "You have always been jealous of the attention Emma received," my mother declared. "This is your way of punishing her for being more talented." "This has nothing to do with Emma," I insisted. "This is about boundaries and reasonable expectations." Emma, who had remained silent throughout the argument, finally spoke up. "Please stop fighting. I will figure something out. I can take a semester off and work full-time to save money." "Absolutely not," my mother snapped. "You are not throwing away your future because your sister is too selfish to help." I turned to Emma directly. "I can help you look into additional scholarship options, or maybe work-study programs. There are alternatives to dropping out or going into massive debt. The only alternative is for you to step up and do the right thing," my father insisted. "Family takes care of family. I have been taking care of this family financially since I was a teenager," I said, my patience finally exhausted. "I am done being your ATM." My father stood up abruptly. "If that is how you feel, then perhaps we need to reconsider what family means. You clearly have the resources to help but are choosing not to. This house represents years of sacrifice and hard work," I said. "I am not jeopardizing that. That house should be helping secure Emma's future, not sitting here as a monument to your selfishness," my mother declared. As they prepared to leave, my father delivered a parting shot that would prove prophetic. "This is not over, Amanda. If you will not do the right thing voluntarily, There are other ways to ensure family obligations are met. I assumed it was an empty threat. The kind of dramatic statement my parents often made during arguments. I was wrong. 3 weeks after that disastrous family visit, I received an envelope from the county court. Inside was a summons informing me that I was being sued by John and Karen Collins, my parents, for 70% of the value of my home, approximately $154,000. The legal complaint alleged that I had a moral and implied financial obligation to support my sister's education, and that my purchase of a home instead constituted financial abandonment and theft of family resources. The document actually used the phrase stealing her sister's future to describe my home purchase. I sat on my living room floor, the papers scattered around me, unable to process what I was reading. This could not be real. Parents do not sue their children over money. They do not drag family disputes into courtrooms. Yet the official seal and case number confirmed this was no joke or empty threat. My hands shook as I dialed my parents' number, hoping that this was some elaborate scare tactic that we could still resolve. My father answered on the fourth ring. "Yes, Dad. I just received court papers. Are you and Mom actually suing me?" "We are simply seeking what is fair," he replied, his tone eerily calm. "You refuse to help your sister voluntarily, so we are pursuing legal means." "This is insane. You cannot possibly think a court will force me to give you my house money. Our lawyer thinks we have a case based on family obligation and implied contract. You benefited from family resources growing up now. You owe a return on that investment." The conversation became increasingly surreal, as my father outlined their position as if it were perfectly reasonable to sue one's child. "Dad, please, this will destroy any relationship we still have," I pleaded. "That is your choice, Amanda. Do the right thing, and we can put this behind us." After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence for nearly an hour before finally calling Jessica. She arrived at my house 30 minutes later with wine and a determination to help. "This cannot be legal," she insisted, reading through the documents. "They cannot just claim a right to your house because they want the money." The next morning I called in sick to work for the first time in my career and began searching for a lawyer. By noon I had an appointment with Linda Cohen, an attorney specializing in family law. Linda's office was warm and inviting, contrasting sharply with the cold reality of my situation. After reviewing the documents, she looked up at me with a mixture of sympathy and professional assessment. "I have seen some contentious family disputes in my 20 years of practice, but parents suing a child for buying their own home is certainly unique," she said. "The good news is, their case has virtually no legal merit, so they cannot actually take 70% of my house number. There is no legal principle that would entitle parents to their adult child's assets based on an implied obligation to a sibling," she explained. "The problem is that defending yourself will still cost money and emotional energy." We discussed strategy documentation I should gather, and the timeline for responding to the lawsuit. Linda advised me to compile evidence of my financial independence, including tax returns, showing I had not been claimed as a dependent since age 18, proof of paying for my own education, and documentation of money I had already given to my family over the years. "Their case hinges on the idea that you owe them something. We need to demonstrate clearly that if anything, the balance is tilted in the other direction," she explained. The next few weeks were a blur of legal preparations, anxiety, and disrupted sleep. My work performance suffered as I struggled to concentrate. Fortunately, my supervisor Michael had become something of a mentor over the years, and noticed my distraction. When I finally explained the situation, his reaction validated what I had begun to understand. "Amanda, what your parents are doing is not normal. It is exploitative and abusive." Hearing someone in a position of authority named the dynamic so clearly was both painful and liberating. I had spent so many years normalizing my family's behavior, making excuses and accepting blame. Now outsiders were confirming what I had only recently begun to acknowledge: my relationship with my parents was fundamentally unhealthy. Support came from unexpected places. Colleagues offered encouragement and practical help. My neighbors, upon hearing snippets of the situation, brought meals during particularly stressful days of legal preparation. Even Tyler, despite our complicated history, became a steady presence, helping me organize financial records and providing emotional support. Jessica suggested I look for a therapist to help process the emotional impact of the lawsuit. "This is trauma, Amanda. You need professional support to work through it." I found Dr. Russell, a therapist specializing in family estrangement and financial abuse, who offered sliding scale fees. Our sessions helped me recognize patterns of manipulation and begin to unravel the guilt that had been instilled in me since childhood. Your parents created a narrative where your role was to provide, not to be provided for, Dr. Russell explained during one session. Children are not supposed to be financial assets to their parents. That reverses the natural order of nurturing. As the court date approached, I received an unexpected phone call from Emma. We had not spoken since the disastrous lunch at my house. "Amanda, I just found out about the lawsuit," she said, her voice shaking. "I had no idea they were doing this. I never asked them to sue you." "You did not know?" I asked, surprised. "No, I would never want this. I am so sorry they are putting you through this." Her call reinforced what Linda had advised, to separate my feelings about Emma from my feelings about my parents. Emma was as much a victim of their dysfunctional expectations as I was, just in a different way. The lawsuit consumed my thoughts and invaded my dreams. I had nightmares about becoming homeless, about judges ordering me to hand over my house keys. During waking hours, I obsessively checked my bank accounts and calculated how I would survive if the impossible happened and I lost the case. Linda reassured me repeatedly that such an outcome was extremely unlikely. "The law simply does not work the way your parents think it does," she explained. "Parents cannot force adult children to pay for their siblings' education, no matter how much they believe it is morally right." Still, the mere existence of the lawsuit felt like a profound violation. The home that should have represented security and achievement had become a source of anxiety and conflict. The parents, who should have celebrated my milestone, were attempting to take it from me. As we prepared for court, Linda helped me gather evidence of financial contributions I had already made to my family. Bank statements showed transfers totaling over $15,000 over the past decade. Emma provided a written statement confirming she had not asked for or expected my financial support for her education. "We have a strong case factually and legally," Linda assured me the night before our court date. "Try to get some rest." Rest, however, proved elusive as I contemplated facing my parents across a courtroom, our private family dysfunction on public display, our broken relationship formalized in court records. The final severance of what little connection remained felt both inevitable and devastating. The county courthouse was an imposing stone building that seemed designed to intimidate. I arrived early with Linda, dressed in a conservative navy suit that I hoped projected confidence I did not feel. We set up at the defendant's table, arranging our documentation in neat folders. "Remember, speak only when addressed by the judge," Linda reminded me. "Let me handle the arguments. If you need to respond to something, write it down and pass it to me." My parents arrived with their attorney, a thin man, with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetual frown. They did not acknowledge me as they took their seats at the plaintiff's table. My mother stared straight ahead while my father whispered to their lawyer. The physical proximity, yet emotional distance, created a surreal atmosphere. Judge Harriet Wilson entered the courtroom, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and an expression that suggested she had seen everything in her years on the bench. After preliminary introductions, she reviewed the case file with a furrowed brow. "I have been on the bench for 17 years. She began looking over her reading glasses at both parties. "And I must say this is one of the more unusual family disputes I have encountered. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, you are suing your daughter for 70% of the value of her home to pay for your younger daughter's college education. Is that correct?" My parents' lawyer stood. "Yes, Your Honor. My clients believe their elder daughter has a moral obligation to support her sister's education, particularly given the family's financial contributions to her upbringing." Judge Wilson's expression remained neutral, but her tone sharpened. "Moral obligations and legal obligations are not always the same thing, counselor. Please explain the legal basis for your claim." What followed was a tortuous argument about implied family contracts and conditional support during minority. The lawyer claimed that by accepting parental support as a child, I had implicitly agreed to a reciprocal obligation to support my sister. Linda took notes calmly beside me, occasionally squeezing my arm reassuringly when particularly outrageous claims were made. When it was her turn to speak, she rose with composed confidence. "Your Honor, this case has no basis in family law or contract law. Miss Collins was a minor child under her parents' care, which is a legal obligation parents voluntarily assume when they have children. Children do not contract to receive basic necessities from their parents." She methodically dismantled each argument, presenting documentation of my financial independence since age 16, including tax returns showing I had not been claimed as a dependent since high school, proof of self-financing my education, and bank records showing substantial financial assistance I had already provided to my family over the years. Far from taking from the family, Miss Collins has contributed over $15,000 to her parents and sister. Since she was 18 money, she was under no legal obligation to provide, Linda explained, submitting the bank records as evidence. The judge reviewed the documents with interest. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, were you aware of these financial contributions from your daughter? My father shifted uncomfortably. Those were gifts not related to this matter. $15,000 in gifts seems quite generous from someone you are characterizing as selfish and unwilling to support family, Judge Wilson observed. My mother spoke for the first time. That money was nothing compared to what Emma needs for her education. Amanda has a good job and just bought a house. She clearly has resources she is withholding. The judge turned to me directly. Miss Collins, what is your current financial situation after purchasing your home? With Linda's nod of approval, I explained my careful budgeting, the years of saving for a down payment, and my current mortgage obligations. I am not wealthy, Your Honor. I worked multiple jobs through college, paid off my student loans through strict budgeting, and saved for years to afford a modest home. I simply cannot afford to pay for another person's entire education without jeopardizing my own financial security. Judge Wilson nodded thoughtfully, before turning back to my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, what financial planning did you do for your younger daughter's education? My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. We expected scholarships would cover most costs, my father finally admitted. Emma is very talented. And did you not make the same expectation for your elder daughter's education? The judge pressed. Amanda was always independent, my mother said dismissively. She made her own way. Because I was given no choice, I interjected, immediately regretting breaking protocol. The judge gave me a measured look but did not reprimand me. Instead, she directed her next question to my parents. Did you contribute financially to Miss Collins's college education? We could not afford to at the time, my father replied. Yet you expected her to afford her sister's education now. Judge Wilson's tone made clear her skepticism. The proceedings continued with testimony about family dynamics and financial expectations. My parents' lawyer tried to frame the situation as a simple family dispute, where the court should enforce fairness between siblings. Linda countered by emphasizing the legal autonomy of adult children and the absence of any contractual obligation. As the arguments wound down, the courtroom door opened quietly and Emma slipped in, taking a seat in the back row. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw a mixture of embarrassment and determination in her expression. After a final round of statements, Judge Wilson called for a 15-minute recess to review all evidence before making her ruling. As we waited, Emma approached our table hesitantly. Can I speak to the judge, she asked Linda, about what Linda inquired cautiously, about the fact that I never asked for any of this, and do not want Amanda to pay for my education this way. Linda explained that the judge might or might not allow additional testimony at this stage, but advised Emma to stay close in case an opportunity arose. When Judge Wilson returned, she surprised everyone by calling Emma forward. I understand you are Emma Collins, the younger sister, whose education is at the center of this dispute. Do you wish to make a statement to the court? Emma stood nervously at the center of the courtroom. Yes, Your Honor. I want to make clear that I never asked my parents to sue my sister. I did not know about this lawsuit until recently. I would never want Amanda to be forced to pay for my education, especially not by giving up her home that she worked so hard to buy. My mother made a small noise of protest, which the judge silenced with a stern look. Emma continued, gaining confidence. Amanda has always helped me when she could. She helped me apply for scholarships and financial aid. She taught me how to budget and manage money skills. Our parents never taught either of us. I have options for continuing my education without taking anything from my sister. Judge Wilson thanked Emma for her statement, and then delivered her ruling. Having reviewed all evidence and testimony in this matter, I find the plaintiff's claim wholly without merit. There is no legal basis for forcing an adult child to finance a sibling's education, regardless of any perceived moral obligation. Furthermore, the evidence clearly shows that Miss Plyfe, Amanda Collins, has already provided substantial financial support to her family over the years, far beyond any reasonable expectation. She continued, addressing my parents directly. Mr. and Mrs. Collins, the court is troubled by your apparent different treatment of your daughters. You seem to have expected financial independence from one, while assuming ongoing support for the other. This is not a matter for legal remedy, but rather family counseling. The judge dismissed the case, and in a final unexpected move, ordered my parents to pay my legal fees, stating that their lawsuit was frivolous and potentially vexatious. As the courtroom began to clear, I remained seated, overwhelmed by the finality of what had just occurred. The legal battle was over, but the emotional damage felt irreparable. My parents left without speaking to me, their rigid backs and quickened pace conveying their anger at the outcome. Emma approached tentatively. "Amanda, I am so sorry about all of this. It is not your fault," I assured her. "Can we talk? Maybe get coffee or something?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak further. Whatever came next in our family relationships, nothing would ever be the same again. The lawsuit had forced a confrontation with decades of dysfunction that could no longer be ignored or excused. As Linda gathered our materials, she offered a gentle observation. "Family estrangement is painful, Amanda. But sometimes it is necessary for healing to begin. You have legally established your right to boundaries. Now, you can start the process of emotional boundaries as well." Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a complex mixture of vindication, grief, and surprisingly hope. For the first time in my life, I had publicly stood up for myself against my parents' expectations and demands. Though the victory felt hollow, given the circumstances, it represented a crucial first step toward a healthier future. The days following the court hearing passed in a blur of conflicting emotions. Relief that the legal threat to my home was gone, mixed with profound sadness about the state of my family relationships. I took a week off work to process what had happened, spending quiet days in the house that had become both sanctuary and battleground. I did not hear from my parents, nor did I expect to. The courtroom had made explicit what had been implicit for years. Our relationship was fundamentally broken, built on obligation rather than love, expectation rather than acceptance. The lawsuit had not created this dysfunction, but merely exposed it in the harshest possible light. Linda had recommended continuing therapy advice. I took seriously. Dr. Russell helped me understand that grief for a relationship that never existed is still valid grief. You are mourning the parents you deserved, but never had she explained during one session. That loss is real, even if the relationship itself was unhealthy. We worked on establishing what she called internal boundaries, the emotional counterpart to the legal boundaries the court had affirmed. I learned to recognize and challenge the voice of guilt that had been instilled in me since childhood, the belief that I was selfish for having needs and wants of my own. 2 weeks after the court case, Emma and I met for coffee at a neutral location. The conversation was awkward at first, years of family dynamics, creating an invisible barrier between us. "I moved out of Mom and Dad's house," she said, after preliminary small talk had been exhausted. "I am staying with my friend Sophia until I figure things out." "Are you still in school?" I asked. She nodded. "I reduced my course load and got a job at the campus bookstore. It will take me longer to graduate, but I will get there eventually. I also applied for additional scholarships like you suggested." "I am proud of you, Emma," I said, meaning it. "Taking control of your own path is not easy." "I had a good example," she replied, meeting my eyes directly. "I always admired how independent you were, even though I did not understand until recently that it was not by choice." That conversation marked the beginning of a new relationship between us, one based on mutual respect, rather than the competitive dynamic our parents had fostered. Emma began to share her struggles and triumphs with me as a peer, rather than as the favored child seeking handouts. As months passed, I slowly rebuilt my life around the truth, rather than family mythology. My home, now free from legal threat, became a true haven. I painted walls, planted a small garden, and gradually furnished rooms with pieces that brought me joy. Each improvement felt like an affirmation of my right to create security for myself. Work provided another source of stability. Michael, understanding the personal crisis I had weathered, offered me additional responsibilities that led to another promotion. The increased income allowed me to start a modest investment portfolio, furthering my goal of long-term financial security. Jessica remained a steadfast friend, celebrating small victories, and providing perspective during moments of doubt. "You know what amazes me most about you," she said during a Saturday spent helping me install kitchen shelves. "Your capacity for joy, despite everything. You never became bitter." Her observation surprised me, as I had not recognized this quality in myself, but she was right. Despite the family dysfunction, I had not allowed it to define my entire worldview. I still found pleasure in small things, still believed in the possibility of healthy relationships. Inspired by my own journey, I started a blog about financial independence for young adults from difficult family backgrounds. The response was overwhelming, with hundreds of comments from people sharing similar experiences. What began as a personal outlet evolved into an online support community with regular video chats and resource sharing. Through this platform, I connected with others who understood the particular challenges of building stability without family support. We discussed practical matters like building credit and emergency funds, but also emotional issues like setting boundaries and managing guilt. The community became an unexpected source of healing, a reminder that shared experience diminishes isolation. 6 months after the court case, I received a handwritten letter from my mother. The envelope sat unopened on my counter for 3 days before I found the courage to read it. "Amanda," it began. "The past months have given me time to reflect on our relationship and my role as your mother. While I still believe families should support each other, I recognize now that we placed unfair burdens on you from a young age. This realization has been painful to acknowledge." The letter continued with an awkward but seemingly genuine attempted apology, stopping short of taking full responsibility, but acknowledging that mistakes had been made. She requested a meeting to begin healing our family, a phrase that simultaneously triggered hope and skepticism. After discussing the letter with Dr. Russell, I agreed to meet my mother at a cafe near my office, a public place where I could leave if necessary. The meeting was tense and uncomfortable, with long silences and careful word choices. "Your father still believes we were right," she admitted toward the end of our conversation, "but I miss having you in my life. I cannot return to the old dynamic," I told her firmly. "Any relationship we have moving forward has to be based on mutual respect, not obligation." She nodded slowly. "I'm not sure what that looks like, but I would like to try." This tentative reconnection was neither a fairy tale reconciliation, nor a complete failure. Over subsequent months, my mother and I established a careful, limited relationship. We met occasionally for coffee-keeping conversations focused on neutral topics. My father remained distant, unwilling, or unable to acknowledge the damage done, though he stopped actively hostile behavior. A year after buying my house, I hosted a small anniversary gathering. Emma attended, bringing her new boyfriend and a homemade cake. Jessica and Tyler came along with colleagues who had supported me during the lawsuit. My mother declined the invitation with a polite note, perhaps understanding that full family reconciliation, if it ever came, was still far in the future. As I looked around at the people who had chosen to be in my life, who valued me for who I was, rather than what I could provide, I recognized the profound shift in my understanding of family. Family was not merely biological connection or obligation, but a community built on mutual support and genuine care. The house that had become a point of contention was now unquestionably mine, not just legally, but emotionally. Each mortgage payment felt like an affirmation. Each home improvement, a declaration of my right to create stability for myself. The most valuable lesson from this painful journey was understanding the difference between guilt and responsibility. For years I had carried guilt about not meeting my parents' expectations, about prioritizing my needs, about setting boundaries. Therapy and experience had taught me that responsibility to oneself is not selfishness, but self-preservation. That boundaries are not walls, but healthy definitions of where one person ends and another begins. I still had moments of doubt and sadness, days when I mourned the family relationships I would never have. But these episodes became less frequent and less intense as I built a life aligned with my own values rather than imposed expectations. As I stand in my kitchen today, preparing for another day in the home I fought to protect, I realize that true freedom comes not from external validation, but from internal conviction. My parents may never fully understand or accept my choices, but their understanding is no longer necessary for my peace. This house is more than wooden beams and mortgage payments. It represents my right to define my own path, to establish healthy boundaries, and to create security on my own terms. The journey here was longer and harder than it should have been, but that only makes the achievement more meaningful. What would you do if faced with a choice between family expectations and your own well-being? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might need to hear that standing up for yourself is not selfish, but necessary. Thank you for listening. Take care. Good luck.